everyone. Hi. So, welcome and thank you for being here, and thank you to Lazada for providing this very nice room, as well as providing the food. So that's really nice. So today we're going to talk about Rancher, which is an orchestration framework for Docker. So how many of you have worked with Docker or know anything about Docker? So there's about 10%. Very little, but so I'll quickly give a quick overview of Docker. So basically, Docker is a Linux container framework that allows you to package your applications in a container, just like you would package a, like you would package your groceries to be packed in a container to be shipped off to other countries. So what it helps you do is, if you containerize your applications, you're able to make sure that the application runs inside the container exactly the same way as it runs on your laptop, exactly the same way as it runs on the server. Okay? Right. So Docker has been available for a while, and the meeting today is not really about, Docker, because today we're looking at how to orchestrate many Docker containers. Because there's one limitation about Docker, and that's when you put your applications inside Docker, usually you expect to run just one process inside a container. So it's a little bit like a virtual machine, but except it has a limitation that you should really just put one, service inside. So if you have a big application, you need to have many services, and they all need to be able to find each other and communicate to each other. So if you use Docker, the biggest headache that comes next is how you enable many different services of your website to talk to each other. So what we're looking at today is one framework which enables you to do that, and the framework is called Rancher, and it's built upon Rancher OS. And we will be, the presentation will be done by Glenn.
Today I want to give you a brief introduction about Rancher and Rancher OS.
Yeah, just tell me. All right.
Yeah, okay, and here is the first rule, because we are here meet up, not a webinar. So at any time, if you guys have some questions, you can stop me and ask me about it. Yeah. And then here I want to provide you as much as the demo time as I can. Okay.
Next one. Next. All right.
And so first I will talk a little bit about Rancher. Now we can manage the container. Yeah. And then later we have a little bit introduction about Rancher. This is kind of like similar to core. Yeah. Very probably about it demo and question we have the answer. Yeah. Does anyone here can tell me about the advantage of when we use the Docker when we work? Actually, in my opinion, Docker is very good technology, because now I can deploy. For example, in the past, if I want to set up the web server and database server, and it took me about one hour more to set it up. But now with Rancher, just need to take about 5 or 15 minutes, and all things done, all things good to go. It's very fast to deploy. Yeah. And also, if you want to if you want to migrate your server from location A to location B, and then Docker is because you don't have to set it up at the beginning. You can just containerize it and then upload into up on some Redis site, and then you in the new data center just download it and run it again. Yeah, and it's totally the same environment, just like you want.
Yeah, and just to add on that, it's not only when you migrate from different servers, but also when you, for example, migrate from your laptop, your development environment, and you need to put it into the web. So having it containerized enables you to very quickly migrate this container.
Yeah, but however, Docker is still a new technology, so it also has some disadvantage here. First, it's a lack of orchestration and management tool. Actually, if you run Docker for now, I think you already run it on local laptop, right? Yeah. Yeah, but I think for the new beginner, they just run on local laptop, and they read our container on just one laptop. And if we have about maybe 100 servers, and it's very hard to control all of it because you have time to log in into 100 servers and control this container. Like monitoring tool is another disadvantage. With my knowledge, I see that with the Docker itself, I need to log into server and maybe type some command like Docker start, Docker inspect to check whether my container is good to go or not. Yeah, but what we want is we want a centralized tool that we can just stay at one place and we can control and we can monitor our server in our lab. Yeah, like block management capability is maybe it's very similar to the second one. Yeah. I think the biggest disadvantage of Docker itself is like a networking. Like I said before, um, you will deploy all your container on just one host. And what about if you have a container A on host A and you want to container A to talk to container B on host B? So it's impossible if you just only do Docker to deploy. You use some third-party tool. Okay, I will set but for example, I can give you some example about the networking, like we can work in Plano. Lack of storage management. Actually, in my laptop, when I run the volume, I just mount from my local laptop into the container. Actually, if I want to use my volume in another house, it's impossible to do that without the tool. Like the user management, for example, maybe with the Docker itself, I need to give maybe the administrator my root account to log into our server to check it out, which is not secure enough to provide in the production environment. And Rancher here is just like KAS of Google. It's an orchestration platform that can totally solve our business problem. It is designed to manage Docker development and infrastructure at scale. You can see here from the image that Docker will combine a lot of projects, a lot of open source projects into one technology. You can see here Rancher can do container orchestration, monitoring, resource management, resource management. Actually, right now, resource management in Rancher, I think is not good enough. But I think Rancher engineer will spend a lot of their time to improve it. Also, service discovery. Anyone here use CoreOS? Yeah. Yeah, call as you know that we have a service on ECD, right? Yeah, actually this service will recognize all your container in your infrastructure and let them know each other so they can talk to each other. Yeah, about network storage service also. Yeah. Um, Before practice, we need to log into our server to manage it. Now we can sit. Now we can just sit at the one place. It's one user interface to manage our container and create and delete it. We don't need to spend wasteful time to log into our server. As you see in the second image, Ranger will support a lot of cloud service, a lot of cloud provider service, and even when Metal Ranger can support it also. And in the third image, the process of install Ranger server is very easy. Actually, I can set it up in just about 10 minutes or less. Okay. And inside Ranger server, they provide you a lot of default tools like manage storage, load balancer, and memory network. I want to talk a little more about Ranger network here. Ranger network will use the IPsec tunneling protocol to set up the connection between your host. That means your host will talk to each other directly. But you know the IPsec tunneling is maybe little slow right now because it needs to encrypt packet and then send it. So maybe it's little lower than the real network infrastructure.
So is that a create a private public network?
Yeah.
So one is that have AWS and digital options. And inside AWS they have IDBC.
They're asking to move the tripod.
Well, normally for security because now the government argument and settlement, DBC more or less create private network so that inside the local you use the private IP to communicate.
Actually, our network container you create before you show your host to Ranger will be the same.
They can move
Ranger
the
will not
tripod this way
will
in
not
front
have
of us.
this.
But then how can say I have a big of the node insignificant that we hostage on DigitalOcean?
Yeah.
Then how can the Amazon the EC2 talk to the
Yeah.
DigitalOcean?
Okay, I understand. Actually, we need to install an agent on each host. So the agent, the role of the agent is they will talk to the Ranger server. And after the Ranger server recognize this host, and then our host can talk to each other.
I assume that renters would install that agent on default or
Um,
I have to install it.
It depends on what provider you use. If you use Amazon or DigitalOcean service, you can provide Ranger server an API key, and Ranger server can use this API key to automatically create automatically install the agent on it. Yeah, that's all the brief introduction about Ranger, and I want to give you a short look about Ranger OS. With Core OS, before I think Core OS maybe is the smallest, latest distro to run faster, but now I'm wrong because Ranger is still small, even smaller. It's about only 20 megabytes. Only 20 megabytes. Ranger is focused on our system service. Ranger OS will consider it only only a container that run on OS, not just that mean in your OS you can update your OS very easily because you just need to update your container. It's not difficult to update it. Yeah. With this, maybe I want to show you. I want to log inside the server and show you some stuff about what I talked about. It's just only the container here.
Just turn around. Just sit down, put your laptop on your bed.
Yeah. Okay, I will log into my Rancher OS server here. Okay, here inside the Rancher OS.
Can you zoom in?
Yeah.
Can you zoom in like
Yeah, font's bigger. Control plus.
One make a bit bigger something.
Should be Command plus.
Yeah, Command plus normally to increase. But you have to focus it.
I see.
Yeah.
Okay, it's big enough here. Okay. Here in Rancher OS, we have two Docker daemon run on it, like Docker here. It's the usual Docker daemon for create user container, and one is system Docker here. And I want to show you some system container here. System Docker, you see, all the system service. Rancher OS will consider it only simple container. So if we want to upgrade, we want to delete the system service. It's very easy to do that. We don't have to. For now, if we have CentOS 6 and we need to update to CentOS 7 for example, we don't need to do that again in Rancher OS because your system service itself it can be upgraded just by you delete this container and then you boot a new image, then you will create a new container based on that new image. Yeah, there is. I think this. There's no downtime when you upgrade the OS or something. Yeah. Okay. I want to turn it back.
What do you want?
Yeah. Yeah, here's what I said. All thing we will container inside Rancher OS. There's no such service that outside the container. Okay, maybe it's enough for some definition. So I want to show you now is my little demo and how Rancher will work. Here's my web browser. I will put it here.
You can maximize it. You make it big.
Maximize.
Yeah.
Here is Rancher user interface. Actually, you can do a lot of things. I mean, about maybe 90% of tasks that you can do directly. That you can directly do on the Rancher user interface. With me, it's very maybe it's very easy to use here. I will show you some tasks here. Here we have 3 hosts. Rancher 03 is the one which run Rancher OS, and the rest is run Ubuntu for now. Yeah. About the admin page, you can use local authentication, or you can integrate with GitHub or something, GitHub or LDAP. Okay. What I do now, I will blow the whole things up, and I want to do it again. Again, so you see. Okay. Here I want to show you my diagram. My demo diagram here. I have a one service called click count that will count how many times that you access my website. Yeah, and it continuously up. All the data will be saved into Redis, and will be log balance. I will call it every will log balance the traffic into the click counter containers here. User can access it. After that, I will update the click count version 1 to click count version 2. I will show you how easy that Rancher can do the upgrade. Of course, that is without downtime. Without downtime, you can upgrade your service without downtime. It's very smoothly. After that, okay, I will then do one more step to get it to version 3. Yeah. And also the data will be persistent. It will be persistent. The number will be increase without losing the data when I upgrade or something. Okay, here. And also I want to do it on user interface first, and after that I can show you how to do it on the command line. Yeah, I want to add a service. Click count version 1. Sorry. At this time I want to read Redis service first, so the click count can talk to it. Redis service. Advanced option. Here, I want to show you about a little bit more. You see three of my server here. You see Rancher 01 and Rancher 02. It's on zone S1, right? Zone S1 here.
Actually, two systems.
Yeah. Okay, I think we need to do. You see it? Rancher 01 and Rancher 02 is on zone S1, and Rancher 03 is on zone S2. What I mean is, when I deploy a new container, I can control the place. It will be create. For example, if you want to create a new container only on zone S1 and don't want it to move, to zone S2, you can totally do that. You can control that process.
And what will the zone
Actually, zone is just a label. You can create whatever you want. It's just a label. It's just your own rule. You can create whatever you want.
So say if I have AWS, then one zone would be one index or other meaning zone.
Yeah.
Or it would be like one zone for AWS.
I can show you how to add label here. You see? Like here you want to
Just like a tag or something.
yeah, just like a tag, it's a label. So like I said, you can read whatever you want based on your own rule. We can decide the behavior of the container.
We have the agent on.
Yeah, we have the agent running. Okay.
Sorry, what rules are you talking about? Like whether you define rules? What?
Okay.
Rules?
So for now, I will create one container which will only run on host that have the labels on S2, and you will see it. I want to create a service Redis here. advanced option, scheduling. Here, you will see the rule will work here. The host must have a host label zone as true. When we define it, the container will never be created on zone S1. It will only locate on zone S2 host. I want to push create. Let's say. Yeah.
So what it's doing now is to go to the Docker.
Yeah, you're right.
package. It's entirely based on the name.
Yeah. I want to show you more. The name is whatever you want, and here the email here.
So if this is my personal record, then it would be like my name slash the name of the record.
Yeah, you're right. Actually, what the Ranger do here is it will connect to Docker Hub to find the specific email that we provide here.
You mean the Azure connect to Docker to
Yeah, actually the process is Ranger server tell the agent, hey agent, you should go to Docker Hub and pull the email down and then start a container. Yeah. If all down here, I can go around and check the start here. You can see CPU, memory, network storage here. Like that, we can do a lot with user interface.
CPU memory is the container operator.
Yeah, it is CPU and memory of container. Actually, you can even enter console here.
We have any define how many memory CPU for
Yeah, we have it. Can show you more about the process of rendering service here. Advanced. Here's what you're talking about. It's a memory limit, CPU pinning. Like if your computer has 4 cores and you enter here J0403. So this container will only use core 0 and core 3. It will not touch core 1 and core 2. Yeah. Yeah, it can. Actually, with your maybe you need to configure more because the default option is only pulled from the Docker. But I read the document that actually it can use the private hub, but I never done it before.
It's actually quite simple.
Yeah.
It's actually quite simple for you to just register the private one as the main hub. So
Yeah.
it's right in the menu.
Mm-hmm. Okay. For now, the second step, I want to add service, my own service here. Click. Count v1. Here, I want to pull the email from my repository. Click. Count v1. Service link. What I do now is I will link my container to the Redis service. I have just created a few minutes before. Redis, add the name Redis. And now I want to run it only on host that has the label zone S1. Sorry. And I want to run through containers also at the same time. And you see maybe because I have done it before, so the process is kind of fast here. But if you just maybe you just set it up and run it at the first time, it took a little more longer because you have to spend time to pull the email. And now I have full OA already, so it may be a little fast.
There was a problem with create new service and you link different services together.
Yeah.
I have never used such tool before. Normally when I link content together, I have to specify the port. And I need to see you specify which port service you would like to connect.
Yeah, that's a good question. For example, you create, you build a new element. You can specify the port you which you export in a Docker file. Yeah.
So it will get the
Yeah.
port and
Yeah. It will get the export port. If you don't export port, then other container will not see it. We have to export it. Okay.
Hey, but interesting. Then it means that for how many people can I install for Docker people?
Actually, I think it's we can export whatever box we want, about 60,000 and 65,535
When we decide to link to another service, it will install all the port at the end.
Yeah, you're right.
All of them?
All of the SQL port.
You can choose the box.
But
You-
like by default, is it like all of them?
No. By default, no box we export.
I
Yeah.
think he was meaning more like all of them.
Yeah.
No, I was wondering, like, say they have an NGINX service and they want to install 18 that of trade for NTTDS.
Okay. It's all done here. Now I want to have a little bit check whether my container work. Let's see the log. Okay, it up. And this container I will export box A1. So for now, I want to create another service. That load balancing service here. Oh, sorry, wrong. This is the feature of Ranger. It's SA Pro C container. You don't have to pull another load balancer container to run it because Ranger already have it. I will name it LB here, and I want to access box 80. I want to link it to ClickHealth version 1. Here. At this setup, if the user go to public IP on box 80, then Ranger will guide the user to box A1, which is exposed on the container here. On the ClickHealth V1 container. And also I want to set it up on some scale sentient. The first question is easy to understand, right?
How many instance can we spend here?
It depends on our hardware space. Yeah, if we create too much, then Ranger can handle it, and it
Can we auto scaling
actually no. You have to get inside here, and if you just add a new server, then you can adjust it by your hand. Yeah, it's not auto. Yeah, so actually I haven't used Amazon auto scaling before. Yeah. 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 That's great. Have to check it out.
It just scale from one container to manage the
Yeah.
container and pick from any trigger to how to scale
Yeah.
1 or 2 or 3.
Mhm.
It CPU memory.
Yeah.
The CPU memory high. The Ranger Auto skill.
Yeah, actually, I think Rachel now is in a beta state, and what the feature you talk about, I think that will some third party tool will provide, and also maybe after they launch version 1, they will have something called enterprise service that will provide such as this feature, and maybe the old version will not. Yeah. Actually, we have money we can buy. Okay, so let's do here. Sorry. Okay. Great. Check the infrastructure. It will be on Ranger 03, SI 85. APA Genesis coming up.
Ranger at line central and to control these.
Yeah.
That's it.
Mm-hmm. Central place to control it. And for now, they already have some like some sub project that will provide storage management also. Convoy, CUNVOY. Yeah, you can Google it. Yeah, it's but actually right now the container will keep the data inside the container, and if you delete it, the data will gone. You need some like storage driver to do it, because right now I haven't installed the storage management on house, so I can give you a look, but maybe I will give I have maybe online demo one. Okay, with hold on. And what do I do now? I access the public IP of Ranger 03. See what happens. Okay, I need to check what's wrong here. What's wrong with any one here? No, yeah, the thing I done wrong here. I forgot to tie the port A1A1 to the load balancing. So actually now the load balancing container will forward all the traffic from port AT to port AT of container, which is not running because I running on port A1A1. So why it failed? Sorry. I want to adjust it. LB. Maybe. It should be 90 and A1. Okay. Check it again. Yeah, it's running now. It's running. Hands on. Yeah, it's kind of a simple questions. I just want to show you how it works. And for now, I want to update my app to another version to simulate the process when we operate the service on a real environment. So now from version 1, I will upgrade it to version 2. Actually, the update process cannot be done in the user interface yet. Right now we have to use the command line to do it. Okay, but you can check about the config here. All the config what we done from the beginning to now will be here, and you can copy it and bring your command line tool and just run, and the whole service then the whole service will be created again.
But only run just and
No,
It's Compose.
it's a Docker Compose. Yeah,
Oh.
you see it? Yeah, then just use all the native API from Docker if they can to provide a service. So we don't have to learn a new thing. Don't have to learn every time. We don't have to learn a new thing.
The last time I checked, Docker Compose put an API to like say it can orchestrate things inside one host. If I have like 2, 3 hosts and put it. Is it okay?
Yeah.
That's the whole point of Rancher, because Docker restricts you to one host. Only you can go across hosts if you use NAT, like port routing,
Yeah,
which is a lot of work. And so what Rancher uses, as he said in the beginning, is it uses an overlay network like Weave or Flannel that makes all of those machines have a separate interface, which is actually using VPN, OpenVPN, right?
Yeah. Sorry.
The overlay network is using IPsec. IPsec tunnels, which is kernel level. So it's using IPsec, which means it can go across different data centers as well. Yeah. So they can all find each other.
Okay. Here we go. Right now I will copy the config to where is it now? Here. Let's see. I want to remove all my work before Docker Compose. Yeah, and I create a new one. Okay. Remove Rancher's Compose. Yeah, copy it.
I don't think you need a Docker Compose file.
Yeah.
I don't think you need it.
Why?
Because with Rancher Compose, if you set up the service already, then you just ping the API and get to recognize it.
Yeah, actually, I think Rancher Compose is only used for when you want to scale, and then you can input the data, how many containers you want to scale.
Are you
And-
upgrading the service here?
Yeah.
Are you upgrading the service here?
Not yet. Now I just input all the config file, and I want to show you how to create from the beginning by command line. Actually, I will do the same work from the beginning, but by command. Okay, here I will delete it out. Once again, I delete it out. Throw it away. Delete it. Whoa, so empty here. Okay, now I will create. It has a command line tool. It's called Rancher Compose. Compose. So what I do now, I will bring the whole setting, the whole things up by using command line Rancher to /p. I call it demo. Sorry. Nothing here. Oh, this is here. Oh, sorry, wrong name. Okay, bring the whole thing up. Okay, you will see in the user interface. It will begin to create service again by the config and provide. I have deleted it out. delete it off and I create it again. So I don't need to point and click and just do it by hand. I can auto.
If there is a question,
Yeah.
can you do this demo now to use the live to deploy your
Comment like. I'm sorry, I don't understand fully.
He wants a little more explanation about the command that you entered in the command line.
Yeah.
So,
Okay. Yep. Okay, I think we will open another window. No. Yeah, okay, I will bring it up. Command plus, right?
Is that really Bánh Bèo?
Yeah, it's just my nickname.
Really?
Sorry about that.
You picked that yourself?
Yeah. Okay. Yes, when I run the Rancher Compose command, what I should do? It will find the Docker Compose file. It will find the Rancher Compose file, and it will it will send to the Rancher server that hey, I want to do this task. You can do it for me. It's the same process when I use the user interface to create the service. But this time it's only a command line. Actually, it's the same. Yeah.
Are you doing this on your local machine or on the
Yeah.
Rancher server?
Here is my local machine, but I connect to Ranchers by provide this information. Yeah, here's my information here. Yeah, you see, I use the API to connect to Rancher server and to guide to do the stuff for me. Yeah. Yeah, actually we can. If I think your laptop is have at least 4 gigabyte RAM, and then we are good to go.
Sorry? But it doesn't matter if you are using a Linux. So basically, you need to be on a Linux kernel to run Docker, and then Docker keeps everything inside the container. So if there's a PHP, it's inside the container.
Rancher?
UI?
Yeah. It's on Java.
Is it Java?
Yeah.
Yeah.
This doesn't matter. It's
But
Java.
it doesn't matter. As long as you can install Docker on your machine and it's good to go. It's just running as a container on your machine. Yeah, you
But
can do that.
yes, on your machine you can run a container, and in that container you have Java. Your machine does not have Java. So you don't need to know what's running. Like I'm on Windows, I'm running Golang, I'm running Ruby. I don't have any of that. Right. Still, you can develop it in container, right?
For sure, very good tools where you recommend against it. I check out the Rancher code, it's quite But they have an API for you to use, like Rancher. This is just the interface. They expose an API for you to use, and you can do it on a web interface, you can do it on a command line, or you can do it with the API. Sounds good.
Take some what from Docker hooks? Load.
Somewhat.
Load.
Log file.
No, mock files.
From Ranger or from your containers? From what? From container?
Yeah, actually, if you want to take the log file from your container, you can use, for example, I can give you some recommendation here. Logs file. Yeah. Yeah, he is very good open source service. Yeah, logs file. What it do is when you run it on your host, it will find the container and take all of those logs and send it to syslog or some log service that you define.
So you can mount a folder log on into container to one container on host. You can use log star or something log agent to send to the send.
I just now uploaded. It's about testing, right? Not about the scale one, two.
But when you have
Docker is a container, you can mount a volume on the local machine to various Docker containers. So it's for your use case to run test, right? Then one of the containers just mount the log directly into a folder on the local machine. You have the log.
Okay, I think we will be back to the process that for now, I will upgrade my service from version 1 to version 2 to see how it works here.
I saw you copy the config, but you can change anything.
I haven't done it yet, I just created it. Now I will do the upgrade process. Thank you for reminding me. I was so stuck into it. I have a little bash script here. Sorry. Plus. Yeah. Here is little bash script that will continuously call to our public IP to see. Now I will upgrade to version 2 to see how it works. Yeah. What I do now, I edit a little bit. Oh, where is it?
YML, not A. YML.
Yeah. What?
Without the A, yeah. You see the move command?
Actually, it's a fish. It's a fish cell. Here they have some very nice feature that you can auto complete your command.
Yeah, that's okay. You found it.
Okay, I will click. What I do is I will upgrade it to version 2. Maybe the process is a little bit awkward right now, but that can be done. So what I do now, I edit the top of the compose file, and I add a new service, click count v2, and I want to upgrade the click count v1 to click count v2. So actually, I don't have to provide a click count v1 anymore because it has been created.
Oh, you create a new for the new version of your code, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Actually, it's in a normal process. In a one document, you will check it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Check it v1, v2, v3.
Yeah, I think you can task.
Yeah, yeah,
It's
right.
easy to manage.
Uh-huh. But for convenience, so I don't. Okay. Clear it. Okay. I will run Ranger compose upgrade click LV1 to click LV2. Oh, sorry. Here, you see the project. It will create a ClickHouse virtual service. And now you see how it works on when I call it continuously.
When you press you create a new container for the new after that
Yeah, it will create a new container for the new image, and after it done, it will delete the old container. It will delete the ClickHouse version 1 container.
and how about the deploy new user
Actually, I'm not sure that it's zero downtime, but I can maybe 99/9%, but I'm not sure 100%. Yeah. Now it begin to upgrade to version 2.
what is the
Yeah. It will take a time to upgrade the whole.
actually the neural time because you have a local XR proceed
Yeah.
in front of the application. I think if when you upgrade the application, the XR will just be off automation.
Yeah. Actually, I just think the same thing, but when I run through the demo for a few hours ago, I see some connection time out. So I said that I'm not sure it's 100%. Just
If you use the ECS of AWS,
Yeah.
the ELB has a condition range. Maybe it's zero time when you use
slow.
But it's cool that across two versions the counter is kept, like it keeps updating consistently, and there's two different versions running. And, yeah. Is there a way to stop the upgrade? Like you notice something's wrong and then you want to stop it?
Upgrade. Maybe I haven't tried.
No, I don't think version 1, 2.
Now, okay. Every container has been upgraded to. Actually, the container of ClickHouse version 2 has been created, and the container of ClickHouse version 1 has been deleted. Yeah. You can say that. Yeah.
How we manage the, because now we have two load balancer,
Mm-hmm.
how we know which one we take?
Only one load balancer
Yeah.
connected to load service.
Okay. Because the load balancer is inside the local compose. It's a virtual compose.
Yeah.
No, it's not inside range compose. Load balancer is something you set up for that purpose.
It's not.
Yeah.
You can also put it into the range compose.
I don't know, is it part of the Rancher system?
The load balancer. Yeah, I actually don't know the origin image for that load balancer.
Yeah.
It is, but then they use a customized version of that. Since these ports, they have like a separate layers of port management, so customized help with that.
if you understand that you add a service and a service can create one command in many blocks. And this process is you upgrade the image, then after upgrade the new container will start and delete the old container. And new container keep the old configuration of the old container.
So the old container has been deleted, and the new container take the same configuration and create a new container. So you have to make the project, the old container will be deleted. Actually, this project I don't update anything. I just delete the old one and bring up the new one. Yeah. The new one will be automatically added to the last balance. Yeah. Here, actually, I have defined it on my. Sorry. Yeah. Here is the process. You see the last browser can click here. That also can click here. It clean the service click v1 as name click v1 in that browser. When the process because I have guy when accessible to update service click v1 to click v2. So at this time the last balance we know that click v1 will doesn't exist anymore, and now the replace one is click v2. Any questions?
Okay, so in your load balancer definition, you say that click count v1 is linked to the containers called click count v1, but those are being replaced by click count v2,
Yeah.
and you will automatically then update the load balancer configuration. Sounds strange.
Yeah.
Is it because this load balancer has a version number inside the name and it shouldn't be, or it's a bit confusing on that part?
Actually, I think it know it because yeah, in the user interface, that balance will know that click count v1 doesn't exist, and it will call to click v2.
Can we check the new config composer?
Yeah. Yeah.
I created
Oh,
two.
it links both. Cool.
So, but the old one is not existing,
Yeah.
so it shouldn't route to that one then.
Because I don't see the root bucket when I access it again, so I suppose that it know it
But that one's there.
one died.
The service exists, but they have zero running containers.
Yeah.
Local-C technology of the serving operation.
Yeah, it's a default service of branch. Yeah, we can actually we can.
So I think the local-C will also recover the
Yeah.
connection go to the version 1.8. The local-C we don't have any device to version 1, and each remove the version 1 and we get on the traffic to the top point. We see the zero and we see the one output the cow to the version 1 to zero. And maybe we still have version to the version 1, so the local cannot be the local.
The last bar actually an XMRC, so you not all know about it. When you can fit the XMRC, you can provide some health check. Yeah, if the service is down maybe for 4 times, and it will automatically remove from the file.
Yeah, I think the idea is the same. The idea of entry, you know, the entry of call or finding all kind of entry.
Can you pronounce it?
Romanticist, what is that? G-E-N-T.
C-A-Z-A-N-T-R-Y.
Gantry.
Gantry, yeah.
Call
I think we need to add CoreOS. Otherwise,
why not deal?
I will see. It's not here, yeah.
Why not?
Way.io, yeah. And way.
Wait.
Oh, quite. Is that
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, and anything is the same idea that
Uh-huh.
the policy here.
Yeah. Okay, I'll have to check it.
But I prefer your last presentation about this.
Well,
It's more simple.
is it finished the presentation? Or you have
Uh,
more?
Yeah, okay, so it's the end. Yeah.
Okay.
I hope you all enjoy it.
Yeah, thank you. So I don't know how many of you are familiar with Kubernetes, the Google framework. Anyone? Well, you are.
Yeah.
Okay, so you have a good overview of both,
Yeah.
right? I was not intending to do a demo of Kubernetes, so while he was presenting, I thought maybe I will try. So I just tried to set up a Kubernetes environment just now. So I could try to do a demo of Kubernetes, but I'm afraid it will confuse everyone with all the different concepts. Maybe I could do that. But from a first perspective, so basically I'm saying I didn't see the whole presentation, but from my perspective, like Rancher, it has like a really nice user interface. It's really familiar with people that use Docker Compose. So because it uses the same Compose, layout. So I see that as positive points. I also like the fact that it uses IPsec as an overlay network, which means you can have one server running on Amazon. You can have another server running on DigitalOcean, or one in your office, and all of those machines can join the same cluster. And you could label them and identify that some containers run in your office and some containers run in the cloud. So I like that about Rancher. That's really cool. But other than that, I mean, I haven't seen much of it, but I got a little bit confused with. But because I only know Kubernetes, I got a little bit confused with the layout of the files and how it works exactly. What is your opinion on it, Lucas?
I think Kubernetes is more major, but Rancher can have a good if we have a good community, it can be very well.
Right. Yeah, Rancher is, like you said, still in beta, and the person who just left, he's using it also in production, I believe, or he's using it a lot. And he was saying that the speed of development that he's monitoring on the GitHub channel, on the GitHub repo, looks like it's very much in development and it's accelerating quickly.
I think first, we can.
I think the same thing. I think you should get some food that was provided by Lazada. Thank you. And in the meantime, I'll try to set up my laptop to connect to the PowerPoint and maybe give a very, very short overview on Kubernetes.
Yeah, I finished.
Perfect. Just like Dr. Raja, just